This is episode 79 with Michael Tatonetti.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
If there's an itch, scratch it. What is up, everyone? This is your host, as always, Brian Tier, and welcome to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 79 today. We are hunting down on that 80th episode, and I'm really excited to be sharing an episode or an interview I did with my good friend Michael Tatonetti. Now, before we get into the episode, a shout out again to our awesome sponsors. It's the cool guys at Rooster. Rooster is the awesome new alarm clock app that allows you to wake up to something a bit better than that boring alarm tone you're so used to. And let's be honest, hitting snooze on way too often. You can wake up to voice notes from friends and family, inspiring channels, including one from myself, some meditation stuff, news headlines, sports news, and so much more. You can check that out on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, and that is Rooster. I urge you to go check that out. Now, on to today's episode, and Michael's another one of our past guests here on the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, and I recently had the chance to sit down with him to speak about his new book that he launched called Do Meaningful Work. Now, as I mentioned in last week's episode, I love being able to share what I've learned as a guest on other people's shows, and this one was probably one of my best interviews so far. We spoke about how to do side projects the smart way, pivoting along your journey when things don't quite feel right anymore, and finding your purpose and how to identify your next steps. In this episode, you're going to learn the 3 reasons I started a podcast, how to tell if you're in the right job, how to know when it's time to quit, should you quit with no plan B, how following your curiosity leads to unthinkable opportunities, and my advice for figuring out your next move. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/079. But for now, guys, let's go hang out with Michael.
All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Purpose Chat. I am Michael Tatonetti, your career strategist, and I'm excited for tonight's Purpose Chat because I have a special guest who is joining me. Everybody welcome Brian Tier to Purpose Chat. Welcome, Brian.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Michael, and welcome to everyone attending. I was going to say listening. I'm so used to it with the podcast. I guess it's watching.
Yeah, we can see you today. That's why the hair is done, right? So we can...
I woke up like this, I swear.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, I had to work for this. All right, so a few housekeeping notes before we begin. I'm excited that the pre-order for Do Meaningful Work has now been open for 1 week, and I have my cards printed. I have everything ready to go. So if you have not grabbed your copy, make sure that you head to michaeltatonetti.com/books with an S, and you can pre-order there. Those who pre-order will not only get a signed copy of the book from me, but I'm also going to be hosting a private virtual author chat on June 28th, just for those who pre-order by June 2nd, where you can join me for a private webinar and pick my brain about the book. And I'll also be sharing some tips and next steps based on your assessment results. So make sure that you head to michaeltatonetti.com/books and grab your copy. Otherwise,
Definitely.
I'm ready to dive into the interview. And Brian, I know you're reading through Do Meaningful Work. You're on my book squad for my beta readers. And so far, I've had good things to say about the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about, thank you. I want to talk about you, though, and what you have going on, because on Purpose Chat, I love to highlight other people who are doing their meaningful work and what it looks like for them, hopefully to inspire others, even if what they are looking to do is not the same thing that you're doing. Just hearing stories, real stories of people, I think is inspiring and motivating. So let's dive in. So I know that, Brian, you are the host of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast. And to start, I would love if you could just share what is the podcast, what is the premise, what is it about, before we get into the backstory and how you got to this point. Tell us about what the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast is.
Well, basically, and I know I'm not going to cheat here. I know we said we'll get into the backstory, but basically, I started the podcast for three reasons. The first is that I wanted to grow my own network and meet other cool people myself. The second was that, at the time of the podcast, when I launched it, I was going through a big rebrand from my old blog. And I wanted to interview other people so that I didn't need to be the expert on everything. And I would never claim to be the expert on everything. But by getting people on, like yourself, you were in an interview, which is still going to be aired, but by getting people on who were experts in their field, I could create a lot more value for people listening than if I just pretended to know it all. And then the third is that I was in a position, and still am, where I wanted to learn from these people that I was reaching out to. And I wanted to ask them certain questions myself, and at the same time be able to serve and to help the people that were listening, who I knew were going through the same things as I was, and will still continue to do so, like for years to come. I think it's a part of being in this age group. So those were the three ideas for the reasons behind the podcast. And basically, in a nutshell, every week I interview a mentor figure or an inspiring sort of success story or an expert on a certain topic to help people in their 20s kind of figure out, who they are, why they're here, and what they're meant to do. And to kind of become, create their own path in life and become the hero of their own journey. I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. So just kind of take control, and, if they're in that place where they're feeling stuck and confused and overwhelmed, like not really sure what to do, just help inspire them and give them some direction and kind of share some next steps.
Very good. Very good. So I love that. And I love how you've been connecting with people. I think you've had some pretty amazing people on the podcast so far. You've had Jenny Blake. You had Paul Sohn, correct? Who else have you had on that have been some big highlights for you? One of my role models, Jacob Sokol, I got to interview him. In fact, it was the episode right before Jenny Blake. And he runs a website called Sensophy, which, the message has kind of evolved. But when I spoke to Jacob, it was helping people in their 20s and 30s figure out WTF to do with their lives. And so he was a big honor for me to interview, purely because he was someone I looked up to. Jason Goldberg as well, who's a big coach. And I also interviewed Jared Kleinert, who is, America. I think it was America Today voted him the world's most connected millennial. Really knows like pretty much everyone there is to know. And he's written a book called 3 Billion Under 30 and 2 Billion Under 20. So he was really cool to interview. But really every guest is like a whole new subject and sort of experiment. I love speaking to people like, the famous people, and I say famous, but the people that everyone knows is really cool because it looks good from the outside. But then I'll speak to someone who no one might have heard of, myself included. I get some people who reach out to me, and those end up being some of the really good interviews. I think everyone has a story, and it's just a case of finding your story and telling it. Wow. Okay, that's a tweetable right there. It's a case of finding your story, telling it. I like that. That's good. Right. Drop the mic. Okay, so let's pivot over then into your backstory. So I know I'm familiar with it a little bit. I know that you studied engineering and went into that kind of environment and didn't enjoy it, started doing one thing, evolved into what you're doing now. Kind of walk us through your journey of self-discovery and how you've gotten to where you are today, at least, because we know it may continue to evolve and change, but how you've gotten to where you are currently.
Yeah, you broke up a bit there, but I got the gist of it. So, how I've gotten to where I am today. So, and if people are watching this and they know me already, it might sound like a stuck record, but for the purpose of your audience, and it's one of the reasons why I've loved your book so much, is it's kind of the journey that I've gone on, and wish I had that book in the beginning. But I grew up in a really good family. I have 3 brothers, including a twin brother. My parents gave us a really, really solid, good upbringing. And everything was really great, and I'm super grateful for everything that we had growing up. But I got to a point where I realized I was just kind of basically on a conveyor belt or a treadmill of always getting to that next thing. And I did really well in school, but I didn't really know what to do after school. And I looked to one of my older brothers, him and I are very alike, even more alike than my twin brother and I. And he had done engineering, civil engineering. And so I decided, maybe that's the thing that I should do. And I did that for 4 years. Again, I did really well at university and got a good job straight out of that. And 2.5 years in, a couple of events led to this point where I'd started reading more blogs. I'd never really done that before. Started reading more blogs online and stuff, and realized that there were a lot of people doing things that they really love doing and still getting paid to do it. So, making like an income and an impact. And it made me question where I was and what I was doing, and thinking like, is this really how I want to be spending my time? And is this, there's a good barometer. If you look at your boss and you ask yourself, like, is he doing, I'm just going to stabilize this quickly. You look at your boss and you ask yourself, like, is that what I want to work towards? Is that what I'm aiming for? And it wasn't. And I didn't really know what that thing was. And after speaking to my dad, who I've since figured out is somewhat of a guru, but after speaking to my dad, I was terrified to even do so because he's really old school. But he said to me, if you're not growing, or if you're not happy, or if you're not adding value to the business, then the sort of admirable thing to do is to resign, because you're not helping yourself or the business if you're just staying there for the paycheck. They could be growing better if they had someone employed who was really fired up about it. Someone else who would love your job could be having that work experience. And you could be growing and doing your meaningful work somewhere else. But if you're just staying that because it's safe and comfortable, you're not really serving anyone. And so I'm not even kidding. 30 minutes after my dad told me that, I'd handed in my letter of resignation.
Oh, wow.
And I don't actually recommend people do that now in hindsight, because it creates a lot of stress if you jump without a plan. And I think there's a dangerous sort of buzz phrase of, leap and the net shall appear. I don't think that's a great strategy at all. But I did that. And then my dad again asked me if I was going to take some time to go travel. And so I did. Not because he said so, but because I realized, like, actually, that's a pretty good idea. And while I was away, I think the change of environment was really, really huge for me. And again, like, you don't need to travel to have this sort of breakthrough or realization, but just getting out of your comfort zone and doing things differently and seeing the world from a different perspective. It allowed me to realize that the thing that I'd always loved doing, and I guess this is like the passionate focus, like you speak about in the book, was helping people improve their lives. And even from like a little 4-year-old or 5-year-old kid in the playground, if someone fell out of a tree, I'd rush over to them to see if they were okay. And, like little thing. And that's like, people say, what do you enjoy doing when you were small? Like, that's the thing that I remember from when I was small. I wanted to be a doctor or whatever. And when I came back from that little stint traveling, I became a certified personal trainer, and I did that for probably about a year. And then realized like that kind of wasn't it. And then I did more health coaching stuff. So like not just fitness, but other areas too. And then that I enjoyed, but it was also kind of a stepping stone. Smiley Pozwalski is another cool guy I interviewed, and he speaks about like career lily pads rather than the career ladder.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. So you're moving forward, but it looks a little, and then the health coaching led to more life coaching kind of stuff. So not just focus on health, but other areas of life as well, such as your career and your relationships and things. And then more recently, I think I'm going through another bit of a pivot, which is helping people create systems and strategies and goals for their vision that they have. So how do you turn that into a plan, actually?
Yes.
And so that's where I am at the moment. And then through my podcast as well, the interview I did with Jacob, my sort of role model and mentor, he connected with me afterwards. And for people listening or watching, this is an amazing opportunity, an amazing example of what happens when you take a step towards what it is you're working towards and how opportunities open up. When I quit my job, I never even knew what a podcast was. But through following that curiosity and starting one and having the interview with Jacob, he reached out to me in probably about September last year. And he said, listen, I'm launching a program in January and I'd love to find out if you were interested in partnering and helping me launch it. And so I said, absolutely. And I got on board with him there. And about a month in, I told myself from the beginning that I'm just going to show up and over deliver and serve, basically make it a no-brainer for him to carry on working with me. And that's exactly what I did. And a month into our sort of relationship of launching that program together, he said to me, listen, like the original idea was just to have you help me launch this program, but I'd love to play together long term. And so that's what we're doing now. I'm helping him run his business and then doing my stuff at the same time. So I guess you could say I've got that as kind of my full-time gig or my day job. And then I'm building my stuff at the same time as a side gig, essentially.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love that. I love some of the things that you said that I loved are that you're serving, right? Like, and even figuring out what your passion, like kind of tying back in, because that, to me, the thing is our passionate focus can take on so many different things, you know, like helping people, like you could think of, you know, being a doctor or a nurse or maybe a psychologist or whatever, but figuring out like when you also tie in what your talents are, what your giftings are, the fact that you enjoy is, I love hearing that. So that's really cool. Now, do you feel like the project that you're working on, do you feel like it fits well in with this lifestyle that you're trying to create?
Totally. So that was another thing. There were two parts, I think. The one was, what do I feel like I want to do, which was help improve people's lives. And the other was, what is the type of lifestyle I want to create? And that was to be able to work from anywhere. I guess you could say I'm now a digital nomad. And to me, that doesn't mean, you know, that's also another buzz term these days. But to me, that doesn't mean like working from my laptop on the beach somewhere every day. But it just means, but it just means like, I never understand how that happens anyway. Like, surely you'll get sand in your laptop. I don't know.
Is the Wi-Fi
don't go anywhere windy. Digital nomads don't go together. So to me, being a digital nomad or location independent just means I have the freedom to choose where I work. And I have a house and I work from home. But if I want to, I can go work at the coffee shop or go, I don't know, go away for a weekend with my girlfriend and her son. But have not that I'd want to work on my laptop on a weekend, but you know what I mean? Being able to work from anywhere and on my own hours, essentially. And so that was the other thing. There was what is it that I'm passionate about working towards? And then what's the lifestyle that I want to create? And definitely. So the work I'm doing now, that plays into that. And it also plays into my skills. And I didn't have any IT background or, you know, I didn't learn I didn't get a formal education in like how to create a podcast or a website or web design. I've pretty much figured that stuff out as I've gone. And that's one of the things Jacob said to me when I started working with him was, I want you to be in a position where you're playing to your strengths and we'll handle the other stuff over time. So yeah, man, I'm having a lot of fun and it's cool because it pairs, I guess all three things is the lifestyle and the working on my own time, but also, you know, we're helping people. It's essentially a life coaching site that we're running. So I'm still seeing the tangible effects of like improving people's lives.
That's awesome. Do you want to plug the website? I can stick it in the comments.
I can, yeah. It's sensophy.com. So that's SENSOPHY.
Okay, very good. Sensefeed.com. All right, we'll plug that in. Very good. So let me ask you this now. If someone came to you and said, don't know what to do, I like what I'm hearing from you, I can relate to the idea of going to college or working this career, but I'm kind of tired of sitting in this cubicle, what advice would you give to anybody who's listening in on what should they do to figure out what their next move is, how to make their career something better than what it is today?
Read, do meaningful work.
That wasn't an ask for a plug, but I appreciate that. But what would Brian? That's what Michael would tell. What would you say? What would you say?
Well, yeah, and we laugh about it, but essentially, like what you've outlined in this book is brilliant. It's getting clear on what your personality type is, getting clear on what your strengths are, finding where those overlap, and how you can use that to, find a way to create an income. And the way that I would say is, I mentioned earlier, like I wouldn't recommend people just jump ship and quit their job tomorrow or half an hour from now, like me.
Right.
And I think, one of the questions I ask all my guests on my podcast is, what is the greatest opportunity for quarter lifers or 20 somethings today? And I think if someone had to ask me that, I'd say the greatest opportunity for people today is the ability to start a side gig. And not so much for creating additional income, but more for the opportunity to experiment and explore with things without them having to put food on the table. I spoke to a brilliant, probably my favorite interview I've done so far was with a guy called Tom Asacker, and one of my older guests, which was really cool. And what Tom said is, like, the problem is too many people are trying to figure out their passion or their purpose, and your passion's not out there, it's in here. And the way that you're going to find that, is it's a feeling, and you're only going to get that feeling when you experiment and when you do things that suddenly bring you this feeling. So I might sit and brainstorm for a whole weekend of like, what do I really enjoy doing? And sure, that can help. And I think I've even created a self-awareness ebook with journal exercises, and that can help. But the thing that's really going to move the needle forward is if you start experimenting and doing things. And it can even be like giving yourself 3 months to start a podcast or write a blog. Or write on medium.com. I've had quite a few people who tell me they love to write, and I've suggested, like, if starting a blog is too big of a step for you, write on medium.com. And so coming back to your question, like, what can someone do if they're not happy in the cubicle life? I think it's find a way to explore ideas that you may have that meet at the intersection of what it is that you enjoy doing, what it is that you're good at, and what it is that people would be willing to pay for. And then kind of find things that meet in the middle of those, and then start experimenting and exploring. There's things like Upwork where you can offer freelance services without a website or anything. You can reach out to people who might need those things. There's a lot of ways that you can go about it. And again, like, if it's a side gig, it doesn't have to make you money for you to eat food that week. So that would be my biggest recommendation, is like, how can you test this for as little money and effort as possible and see if it's something you might want to spend more time on.
I love that. So gaining exposure, going out and doing, not just sitting around and thinking and having the theory, but get out there, try some things out, invest the time, be intentional, schedule it in, and see if it works. And if it doesn't, or whatever you learn from that, then move forward from there with that new knowledge.
Totally. Totally. Like, let's think of an example, like the personal training, for example. I enjoyed that. But I did it for a certain period. And then I was like, you know what, this isn't quite the thing. And I think I can make a bigger difference doing something different. So, like I said earlier, like with my podcast and meeting Jacob and meeting people like you, is I could never have predicted any of this. And I don't have like massive wealth or anything like that. Like, I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
I'm not like one of these passive income internet marketing guys.
Right.
I would actually say I am wealthy, but I'm not super rich. I think there's a big difference.
Right. That mic drop there.
But
too.
I couldn't. We're done. We're just call it in. But I couldn't have predicted this stuff beforehand. I couldn't have said like, okay, well, after 52 weeks of my podcast, I'm going to meet this person and that person. Like, I didn't, and this is no disrespect. Like, I didn't even know Michael Tatonetti existed when I started my podcast.
Michael Tatonetti wasn't even a website when you started your podcast.
Oh, well, there you go. And another good example is I've spoken to a few people, for like a free coaching session, and some of them have wanted to start a podcast, but they don't really know how they're going to get started. And one of the common questions is, I've helped people launch podcasts as well. And one of the common questions is like, well, who am I going to interview? Or like, how am I going to find people to bring on my show? Mm-hmm. And I like to tell them that I've now interviewed close to 60 different guests. And when I started my podcast, I probably knew 2 of those people. Yeah. And every week it's just, you see people on social media and you reach out and then you talk to them like a human being, or you speak to someone. You all know, like, you were a perfect example. Like, I met you because of Dr. Caitlin Foss, and you reached out to me. So I'll say to guests that I've interviewed, like, who do you think I should speak to that would be a good fit for the show? And it just kind of snowballs from there. So again, like, you can't, there were 2 videos. I actually think my girlfriend's son is, I'm going way off track here, but it'll make sense in a minute.
That's okay.
My girlfriend's son is dyslexic and slightly ADD. And through the whole process of discovering that, which was only a couple of months ago, I kind of self-diagnosed myself as ADD as an adult. I was never diagnosed with ADD as a kid, but I actually think I do have ADD. Anyway, now I am going to lose what I was going to say. Where were we?
Shiny object.
Exactly. We were speaking about like knowing. Oh, right. So when I was about to quit my job, the 2 videos that kind of pushed me over the edge were Scott Dinsmore's TED Talk of how to find and do work you love, and Steve Jobs' commencement speech. And in this example, like, Steve Jobs said in that speech that you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So me starting a podcast may have made no sense logically beforehand, but now looking back, my main form of income came directly because I started a podcast with a mentor / role model of mine. So again, like, if there's an itch there, scratch it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, even for me, like, I would have never planned even where I am now. And I just started all this about 4 months ago, and it's just like blown up. Like 4 months ago, I met with my mentor. Almost 4 months ago to this day, I met with my mentor at a Starbucks. I had my journal. I opened up my journal. I was like, Kimberly, what do you think of this book idea that I have? It was just the outline and like notes. I'm like, what do you think about this book idea? And she loved it. She's like, Michael, you've got to write this book. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get it done by December. And then the next day something just snapped. And I'm like, if I don't, like, what's stopping me? Why December? Just this year? Like, because it's January, I was like, let's put a plan in place. Let's actually rock it out and like get it done and see what happens. Kind of what you're saying, like, just try. I don't need the book to eat. Like, I already have a job. And so I just am investing my personal time and seeing what happens. But it's amazing the people that I've met and the things that have happened and the opportunities that have come up. So I completely co-sign on that. Like, just start doing it. I wouldn't have guessed 4 months ago where I'd be today and the connections that I would have and the type of opportunities I've been asked to do. But, and I don't know what 4 months from now is going to look like either, which is kind of fun. Like, you just do it. Go for it.
I can't believe that you've only been doing this for 4 months, because you're like, your brand is solid and the book is really, really cool. I can't believe that's only 4 months. And again, like, another question that I ask all my guests at the end is like, what one thing can people start doing this week to start creating their own quarter life comeback? And hands down, the most common response has been just take that first step. Like, you don't need to, I gave a motivational speech at my high school, which was like one of my bucket list items I got to cross off, as being a motivational speaker.
Yeah, and you look good. I saw the videos. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
And something that I said in there is, it was at night, and I said, all of us have to go home tonight from the school to wherever our driveway is. But the lights on your car don't have to be able to shine all the way to your front door. They just have to shine far enough in front of you so that you can make that next turn or see the red light or the stop street.
Yes.
And take your next move. You don't need to see like how things are going to happen all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And it's the same here. Like, maybe you start a blog and 3 months down the line, you're like, you know what, this isn't what I thought it would be. But you might have met someone along the way and you suddenly think, hey, we should start a project together. There's I can't go on enough about side gigs and just getting started and taking that first step.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So as we wrap up, I want to ask, what do you think, of course, like you just said, we can't see full on out, but like, what do you think is coming up next for Brian Tier? Like, I can see the Quarter Life Comeback book. That's what I'm waiting for you to talk about. I'm waiting for you to be like, hey, Michael, I'm ready to write this book. But what do you see for yourself for the next 6 months or 12 months?
6 to 12 months. So I'm actually thinking of, I mentioned earlier how I think I might be at a pivot point. And I haven't really shared this publicly, so this is a first.
Okay.
But I'm thinking of, well, not thinking, I am going to, when the time is right, split my personal brand from the Quarter Life Comeback and make the Quarter Life Comeback a website and a resource and a hub of its own, and then build offerings onto that. So, maybe that's a monthly membership site where I have sort of monthly masterclasses with the people I've interviewed, where we take the things they've spoken about and really give like practical strategies and action steps to achieve that desired outcome. But just turning it into a sort of a hub for people in their 20s, and then focusing my personal brand on more sort of entrepreneurs and the business strategy and that kind of thing. That's what I see will be the sort of short to midterm steps. Definitely a book is something that I would love to do. I think they say like 90% of people would love to write a book one day, and I don't know what the percentage is that do, but it's not a lot. So a book is in there. And then I'd love to grow a platform as a speaker, as kind of a motivational speaker. So that's there too. And again, like, I don't know how these things are going to happen. But I just know that if I stay focused and sort of keep my eyes on the process, that they'll all kind of pan out when they should and how they should.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, Brian, thank you very much for being on Purpose Chat tonight. I appreciate it. And let us know, where can we find you at online if we're looking to follow you on Instagram or Facebook or check out your website?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that, my name's not super weird like Apple or anything like that, but it's unique enough that I can claim my handle on all social channels. So I'm at Brian Tier, and that's BryanTeare, pretty much everywhere. I like to hang out on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook, again, like Brian Tier, facebook.com/Brian Tier. And then my website, BryanTear.com. I'd love for you to check that out. The Quarter Life Comeback podcast, which you can find on my website, or just search for that in iTunes. And if anyone wants to reach me directly, you can shoot me an email directly at brian@briantier.com. I'd be happy to chat about whatever it is that you got out of this interview, or if there's something that you're a little bit stuck with at the moment, I'm happy to help where I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brian, for being on. Clap it up for you. I appreciate you taking the time.
So there you have it, guys and girls. That wraps up episode 79 of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast. And thanks once again to Michael Tatonetti for having me on Purpose Chat and allowing me to use this interview for the show. I really, really enjoyed this one. And if you did too, I'd love it if you could share it around with your friends on social media and shoot me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know your biggest takeaway. Make sure you've made note, as I mentioned in the episode, of how to get clear on your next step. And remember, just take that tiny first step. If you're feeling overwhelmed or intimidated or confused, your next step is too big and you need to go smaller. There's no such thing as a next step that is too small. Now, as I mentioned, you can get the links and resources that we mentioned in the show at briantier.com/079. And make sure you head on over to quarterlifecomeback.com to subscribe for even more goodness. Really excited about my Facebook group. You can find that at briantier.com/FB group. I've been sharing some more stuff behind the scenes of how I get things done in there, and things are only going to go uphill from here. So make sure you check that out. I'd love to see you in the group. All right, guys, that's all we have for this week. And until next time, keep creating your quarter life comeback.